Randy's giggling already. What is that about? Because I'm bringing props. I'm bringing the homework. So for those of you who were here, raise your hand if you were here last night. Okay, so did you bring your homework? Did you bring your year in review? So let's go through a little bit. Let's start with, let's randomly pick a day. June 16th. August 18th. That was... Where's the good stuff that happened? Okay, so, you know, maybe I won't... Wait a minute. Okay, so forget 2016. Sort of done with that one. So, now, the reason I did that was because I've been thinking about this whole concept of living a new year, right? And I was thinking that in a year we have a certain number of days, right? I mean, the average one of us doesn't pop up and say, hey, I'm only going to have 52 days in a year. Now, granted, we may transition in that time, but there are still the same number of days throughout time. So we have a certain number. However, what we try to do with memories and stuff is we try to tear those days out and get rid of them. And we can't. The only thing we can do is have the option of doing something where our life, our days are more like a binder, where you go through it and you say, well, you know what? I don't particularly like the way this day showed up, so I'm going to take that day out and replace it with something that's more affirming. And what I mean by that is, things happen. Can't change what happens in terms of what happens. But we change what we think about what happens. We are the ones that determine if traffic is good or bad. Traffic is. It's a series of cars moving down the highway at 1.7 miles per hour, even though that thing says 65. So it's sort of like a slow motion parking lot. But we're the ones who determine if that's good or bad. What in our consciousness determines that? You know, for those who do not know, one of my older brothers made his transition May of 2016, right? My second oldest brother. And people say things, and I understand it. I understand. People say, you know, sorry for your loss, and, you know, things. There are the plethora of things. And I appreciate it because it's a sentiment that people are extending. And I love it and I appreciate it. But Leslie's not lost. I know where he is. And when my consciousness expands to the point where I understand there is no death, not death the way that we culturally and societally believe and buy into it, that doesn't exist. So in my consciousness, I'm the one that gets to determine if I am going to mourn the way that I'm supposed to mourn, or if I'm going to mourn in a way that honors life. That's my choice. Because if there is no death, because in some way that would mean there has to be something counter to what God is. If God is life, and God is all there is, then ultimately life is all there is. So there cannot be something opposite to God. Not in our teaching. Now in the traditional teaching of many others, yes, God has a counter, and it is called Lucifer. It is called Satan, the father of lies. But our teaching doesn't. Now, metaphysically, we understand the father of lies, buying into the lie. Yeah, we got that. But there is no opposite. There is no counter deity, because we don't believe in a deity anyway. We believe in an energy, an intelligent presence that is life itself, that is love itself. So there can be nothing other than that. But I get to choose how that shows up in my life. Each and every one of us gets to choose how that shows up in our lives. today's reading ended with a passage from the Bible. Do you remember what it was? You may know the phrase sentenced a different way depending on your translation, but do you remember?
Yes.
You may remember.
Be transformed.
Be transformed by
the renewing of your mind.
By the renewing of your mind. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Now, for those of you who have not looked at the cover of today's program, who may not know the title of today's program, it is Be Ye Therefore Resolute. Now, I tweaked, Be ye therefore transformed by the renewing of your mind, because our minds cannot be renewed if we are not resolute. Now, resolute. Any English majors in here? Okay, yes. Raise it proudly. Yes. So, synonyms. Synonyms are those words that mean the same thing as okay, just want to throw that out there. So we all are on the same page since we only have one English person here. Because I don't want her to say, hey, that's wrong, that's an antonym. Like, I just make sure we're clear. So, to be resolute or resolute, give me some synonyms that you have in your mind that resolute also means determined, dedicated, resolved, committed, steadfast. It's a good one. Any more?
Know the truth.
Knowing the truth. Now, let me give you a couple others. So, faithful, loyal, constant. If we are going to renew our minds, then we must be those things that you named. Now, what does that mean? What does that look like in our regular, everyday living? Right? So let's rewind just a smidge and say it's 2016. And many of us remember what 2016 may have had for us. The bad and the ugly. Let's pause the good for a second. The bad and the ugly stuff of 2016. And here we are in 2017. And one of the things I mentioned last night was, at the bowl burning ceremony, was this concept of letting go of what no longer serves us. But one of the things I didn't mention was that it takes courage to let go. It takes courage to become something new. It takes courage to be something that you've never, per se, been before. It takes courage to stand up in the face of racism, sexism, Islamophobia, etc., 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 homophobia. It takes courage that when someone is doing what they are doing and you see it, and it may be in your own family, and someone is saying, whatever it is they're saying, I don't know why that sounded like a chicken. I really don't know. And they're saying whatever they're saying. And you're sitting there, and there's this part in your mind that says, oh, Mom, stop. But it doesn't come out of this. Or there's this part in your mind that says, oh, Uncle Jeff, oh, would you, no one wants to, but it doesn't get voice. It takes courage to stand up to any form of hatred, even when that hatred is coming through you. And that hatred may show up in things such as, I'm afraid to go ask that person out on a date. I'm afraid to quit this job to do what I really want to do. I'm afraid to sell my home and move where I really want to live. I'm afraid to be free. Harriet Tubman said, in the whole Underground Railroad and the freeing of many, 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 many slaves, I could have freed more if they only knew they were enslaved. I could have freed more. So the whole concept is, you are enslaved, and I am telling you that that's freedom, but you think you're free already. I'm good. I'm good. Massa really good to me. I'm okay. But that's not freedom. Just go somewhere, Miss Tubman. Go somewhere. I could have freed myself if I knew I was enslaved. Enslaved by what? Enslaved by judgment. That which I judge holds me enslaved. Because I am now a slave to the judgment. I am a prisoner to the judgment. So anytime I call someone something other than holy, divine, godly, godlike, love in action, the moment I say, you're stupid, ding, ding, ding. You got the key for these? Somebody? I am enslaved to that judgment. Because in some way, let's think about this. In some way, what we speak, we then move into. Because we already know thought, word, and deed. That's how everything in manifestation happens. It starts as a thought, an idea. It's spoken or given some form of expression, and then creation moves and morphs to make it so. So, how many times have people said things like, well, if you tell a lie, you have to tell another lie to make sure you keep up with the first lie. And then you have to tell a fifth lie to keep up with the third. And you have to tell a 10th to keep up with the... Okay, I lost count I don't know. So you have to keep up with it. Which then, if you tell one lie, and you have to keep telling lies to keep up with the first one, at what point do you now become a liar? See, telling one we can dismiss. I told one, I'm good, moving on. I told 100, I told 1,000, well, maybe that counts now. At some point, we are now accountable for what we are bringing into the world. So when I judge something, and I know part of our human nature is going to do it, yes, and that's okay. But the thing is, we get to choose how much more energy we put into it. Does the snowball stay nice and palm-sized? Or do we walk it all the way up to the top of the hill, place it, tap it, watch it roll and grow in form, grow in size until it now becomes unstoppable, an avalanche of destruction? Because one small word planted in the right soil can kill. How many young children kill themselves because mom or dad or grandma or granddad said, we can't have any of that gay stuff in this house. We don't approve of who you love. And that child takes that. And and they choose to end their lives because the words took their life. Words have power. And we know that what we say to someone else can raise someone up or tear someone down. But the words that we speak to others are nothing in comparison to what is going on in ourselves. Because we speak to ourselves far more than we speak to anyone else. We hear our own thoughts when we are at home by ourselves. We may even speak aloud as we're doing stuff. Tracy does it all the time. I'll be in my room in the basement and I will hear, are you talking to me? No, I'm talking to myself. Or she's talking to the television. Not to judge that, but just saying. It's unique. It's unique. But we talk to ourselves. We hear our own voices. And there are times that we say things that if someone else said them to us, we would not accept it. Someone calls us ugly and we'd be like, boop, thanks for calling, no one's home right now. Don't even leave a message. We wouldn't accept it, but we say things to ourselves. And we do accept it. It's time to be so resolute, so faithful and loyal to this idea of our own divinity that we accept nothing less than our greatness. We want to move into 2017 and we don't want the whatever of 16 to move forward with us. Then let it go. Determine today that I am going to be so resolute in what I think that even when this stuff pops up, it has no soil to fall into. So the seeds can come. The weeds may grow, but I'm not going to nurture them. I'm not going to say, oh, there are weeds, ah, and then go about my business and just watch them keep growing. It's choking out the tomatoes. Like, look, no. I'm going to, and I may get dirty because I have to get out there and do some work. And that's one of the things that keeps us from doing a lot of this spiritual work is we get dirty. Sometimes you got to get dirty to be what it is we are meant to be. But that's not a bad thing. Be so resolute in our minds, so faithful and loyal to ourselves that when something shows up, whatever it is, that we say, even if I don't know or understand what this is or why this is showing up, I don't care. Because I know there is only God and God is good. So somewhere in this, there has to be good. And that is a very, very challenging thing. Because what it says is, part of me has to see and acknowledge that when people make their transition, they transcend from the physical body into spirit, that I hold the truth that I know there is no death. I will mourn and grieve with you. I will support and comfort you. I will hold all of the prayers and consciousness knowing, but there is a part of my mind that also knows there is no death. I may not say that to the grieving person, but I hold it in my mind. My brother is in life after life. Carrie Fisher, Debbie Reynolds, life after life. Where there is only the great grand adventure of more and more, ever expanding consciousness. See, in our finite flesh, we are very committed to knowing difference. Because there is a place where my body ends and hers begins. And there's this space in between. But even quantum physicists say, yeah, but if you could look with your naked eye and really see quantum particles and waves, there would be absolutely no difference between she or I or the space between us. And therein lies God. There is no other. In truth, there is only one. I am. I am that I am. By whatever name we call it, is all there ultimately is. So when things happen, when we watch the news and there are stories of terrorism and there are political kerfuffles or whatever we call them. Not really the word I wanted to use, but it's the best word I can use in church. When things happen, we are being called to be so resolute that I only will accept, yes, life is affirming. Yes, love is real. Yes, God is in the midst of. I will accept nothing else. And my thing that I decided that I'm going to start doing is, for every time I hear even the word terrorism or terrorist, I'm going to be a lovist. Or simply a lover. For every time I hear the word or see the news, I'm going to consciously in my mind reaffirm that no, love trumps hate. Yes. Darkness does not drive out darkness, light does that. Every time this shows up, boop, turn the dimmer switch up until that must fade away. But I must be so resolute that I don't buy into this. Every single one of us has to determine, be so determined that we are not going to buy into anything other than. So I'm going to put her on the spot right now and say, I'm affirming with you and for you that allergies or whatever that is not coming into 2017. I'm affirming and knowing that any one of us, whether we say, I have a cold, whether we say, your body may be experiencing a cold, but you don't have one. Because that which you are cannot have anything other than divinity. Our body temple can experience pains and aches, injuries and illness. And when we affirm that I have it, we are taking ownership of it. Let us be so resolute to say, specificity of language. How are you, Ray? How are you today? I'm great. While my body is experiencing this, I am great. Because the more we buy into and the more we speak forward and speak truth, lowercase t, into our lives. Remember that lie thing I said? You have to tell a lie to tell a lie to tell a lie to keep the lie going. If we buy into I am sick, then we have to start acting like a sick person. Oh, well, what's going on? I didn't sleep right, and, Because we know there's a mind-body connection. If there was no mind-body connection, then 1-900 numbers would not be a multi-billion-dollar industry. What your mind sees and thinks, your body responds. So if your mind thinks, I am sick, and your words reflect, I am sick, I have this or that, do we really believe that our body is not going to say, oh, okay, oh, okay? Do we really believe that on some level the cells in our body are not listening to the energetic vibration of our consciousness? We have to be so determined to not allow anything counter to our highest good to rest in the soil of our mind. To be so loyal to ourselves that when someone from the team of Satan tries to, hey, Rich, come on over to our side. Come on, man. It's good over there. We treat you right. That I'm going to be so loyal to the light of myself and the love that I am and the beauty and magnificence that I bring to the world that I will not betray capital T truth. That's how loyal I am going to be to what I know that I am. I've often asked, Jesus is the great way shower, our example. Why are not more of us demonstrating to that degree or that level? Because even though he is not seen as the exception, many of us still refer to him as if he is, rather than embodying what he taught us to embody, so that each and every one of us are also fully manifesting, fully demonstrating, and fully embodying the I am Christ presence here and now. Why not? We're afraid. In many ways, we're afraid. Because to expand to that level, because think about it. Just pause for a second. Let's suppose that I was to say, Linda had this ability to turn water into wine and walk on water. Do you really think that everybody in the neighborhood would not be at the door? Show us a miracle. Do something magical for us. We already know that if you hit the lotto, Powerball, for $10 million, we all know relatives that we've never even heard of would show up. Just give me $100. Who are you? I'm your uncle, cousin, sister's, mother's, brother's, half-sister's, nephew's uncle. Cousin. What? Get out. So there's this part of us that also denies that level of wealth. Because to whom much is given, much is required. So it's time for us to say, if I am exalted to this level of self-mastery, then wouldn't that also mean that I also have the consciousness, the ability, the control, the discipline, or whatever, to also be able to manage everything in my life experience that comes to me as a master of my life? So there's nothing for me to be afraid of, ultimately. So I invite us to be so resolute to say, today, January 1st, I'm going to be a little more Christ. Not Christ-like, because then that's still saying, you're like it, but you're not it. No. Today I'm going to be a little bit more Christ. And tomorrow, a little more than I was today. And then the next day, a little more than I was the 2 days before. So that by the time June rolls around, so I could have done this all along, huh? Now, does that mean that we're not going to have bad days? No. For as long as we have this earthly physical form, we're going to have some pains and aches that comes with the territory. But there's nothing that says that's bad. Anybody in here own a Rubik's Cube or ever had a Rubik's Cube or ever worked with a Rubik's Cube? How many of us hate them? Someone created this thing, and it is a puzzle that mystifies and baffles people. Tracy says she cheats and she takes hers apart, puts it back together. No judgment, just say it. But it's a puzzle that is meant to be fun, not an obstacle that is meant to be hated. Let's look at everything that way. Every challenge that comes before us is a puzzle to be resolved, not an obstacle to be avoided or a challenge to be hated. So if a doctor comes to you and says, A, B, C, breathe and know that in that breath God is, and that whatever that doctor is letting come out of their mouths, God's got it. God has my back, my front, the top of my head, the soles of my feet, the surface of my skin, to the deep recesses of my DNA. God's got this, and all is well. That when something comes on the news and talks about the new presidential climate, God's in the midst. God's got this. That when someone comes to us and says, yeah, I'm sorry, but you're going to your barn burned down. I'm good, because I can see the stars. All is well. It can only be well. But we have to be so resolute that we determine all is well, right here, right now, because you're God, and you got this. So it is.